Hey friends, welcome back to another Bible time. I'm so glad, as always, to be with you again this week as we continue our series on Jesus. Jesus is inbreaking. Jesus is showing up and showing himself again and again. Today, we're going to continue our journey by reading, or rather talking a little bit about the Gospel of John and what John has to say about Jesus after Jesus's baptism. So last week, if you remember, we talked about how Jesus was baptized by John the Baptist. And it was this great moment of epiphany where God revealed himself in a huge way by descending on Jesus, the Holy Spirit descending on Jesus in the form of a dove, and the voice of God the Father booming out, "This is my Son in whom I am well pleased." It was a wonderful and exciting story. And this week, we move on from that baptism to see what happened soon after that. And we're going to stick to the Gospel of John today. But if you want to look at Matthew, Mark, and Luke, you can see what they have to say. The stories are a little bit different, and I love that we get different perspectives on Jesus's life and ministry, and yet they all proclaim the same thing. All four Gospels are proclaiming that Jesus is Lord, that Jesus is God in flesh, that he came to be among us, to save us, to rescue us, and to ultimately to make things right. And so John's purpose is the same, but John does it in this wonderfully unique way and has some different stories than the other Gospels, which I am so thankful for. And so today, rather than reading directly from the text, I'm going to kind of paraphrase because I want to talk about kind of a long passage. You see, in John 1, right after Jesus's baptism, unlike Matthew, Mark, and Luke, John doesn't have Jesus going out into the desert to fast and pray for 40 days and to be tempted by Satan. Instead, John has Jesus going along the road, and John the Baptist, not the same person who wrote the Gospel of John, but John the Baptist, Jesus's cousin, says to some of his followers, he says, "Look, there's the Messiah." And so walking along the road, these men come up to Jesus and they want to know who he is and what he's there to do. And Jesus says, "Come and see." And then some of them go off and they tell a brother or a friend, and this man named Nathaniel is like, he's from Nazareth. Can anything good come out of Nazareth? And they're like, "Come and see, come and meet this guy." And so he goes and he meets them. He meets Jesus and realizes that Jesus is so much more than he ever thought possible. And then the next day, the third day of this narrative, Jesus goes to a wedding. And at this wedding, everybody's having a great time. They're dancing, they're listening to music, they're drinking wine, they're having fun, but they run out of wine. And Jesus's mother goes to him and she says, "Son, they've run out of wine." And he's like, "Why are you involving me?" And she turns to the servants and she tells them to do whatever Jesus says. And so Jesus tells them to fill up these massive jars with water, and they fill them all to the brim. And then Jesus says, "Take some of that to the host of this party, to the Grand Master." And so they do, and they know that this is just water, and so they're probably like, "Whoa, what would you think in their situation?" I don't know if I would be willing to take that water to the person who's expecting wine, but they do. And he drinks it and he's like, "This is the best wine ever." Usually people wait until the end of the part, or bring out the good stuff at the beginning of the party, and then towards the end of the party, they bring out the stuff that's not as great because people don't notice because they've been having so much fun. But you've saved the best wine for last. And Jesus's disciples, the people who had seen him along the road, to whom he'd said, "Come and see," the people who had been skeptical, but they'd been encouraged to come and see and then were amazed by Jesus, they knew that Jesus was exactly who they'd been looking for because they saw this miracle with their own eyes. Jesus doesn't only break into these holy, what we think of as holy spaces like baptisms and temple and worship services. Jesus breaks in to our walking along the road, into our conversations, and even into our celebrations and into our homes. Jesus wants to show himself to you in every situation in which you find yourself. And so, friends, today, I want to ask you, are you ready to see Jesus? And if you see him, when you see him break into your moments, will you tell someone? Will you invite them to come and see what Jesus is doing? Friends, I hope you will. I love you so much, and I'm so excited to hear about what God does in your life through Jesus our Lord.